Hello and welcome to In Depth. I'm Tina Jha. India's federal structure of governance allows the centre to collect most of the important taxes. But a lot of expenditure falls on the states, which means they also need to be helped with a commensurate portion of tax revenue. So what portion of taxes should the centre share with the states? This is exactly the question that the Finance Commission decides every 5 years. In this line of finance commissions, the 15th panel, constituted in November 2017, became the first to use the 2011 population census to decide the tax sharing. Now, this generated unprecedented debate, with the southern states asserting that the move could harm them. Today in Depth, we will consider this controversy and also how finance commissions function and on what basis do they make recommendations. So as we told you, the southern states are protesting against the 15th Finance Commission's terms of reference. They argue that the terms are biased since the 2011 census shows them having a lower population, which they fear will fetch them a lower tax share. In November 2017, the central government approved the constitution of the 15th Finance Commission. It was given the responsibility to assess tax resources of the country and suggest a formula for sharing taxes between the centre and states for 5 years, starting the 1st of April 2020. However, when the Commission issued its terms of reference, the southern states came out in protest. Representatives from Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, Kerala and Puducherry expressed their concerns. Chief Ministers of Tamil Nadu, Odisha and Telangana wrote to the centre on the issue, while Punjab also expressed its reservations over the terms of reference of the Commission.
Government of Delhi would take initiative for a major national level debate seminar where we are going to involve everybody, even those who are critical of our approach, to join us in this national debate. So we are not going to stop with this memorandum. We are going to take up these issues which are threatening the federal structure of India and constraining the aspirations of the state for their autonomous development, of course, within the constitutional framework.
Collection of taxes and revenues is a joint effort by the centre as well as states. State governments collect many of the central taxes. It is the Finance Commission's responsibility to decide as to how these taxes should be shared between the centre and the states. While working out a tax sharing formula, the Finance Commission considers the revenue performance of the states, population as well as income distance. Other factors like the needs of the states, poverty and special circumstances are also considered.
You see, Finance Commission, as per Constitution, Article 280 of the Constitution, provides for setting up a Finance Commission every 5 years. If you look at the federal structure of financing, you will find that the Government of India has more resources by way of taxation, and the state governments do not have that much of resources. So an arrangement has been set up by which resources from the Government of India will be devolved to the states on a formula basis. And this formula is decided by the Finance Commission.
Till the 14th Finance Commission, population data of the 1971 census was used to determine the terms of reference. The 15th Finance Commission is using the 2011 census figures that is being opposed by many states, especially those that work towards population control between 1971 to 2011. These states allege that the new parameters will end up punishing instead of rewarding them.
मैं ये भी कहना चाहता हूं कि जितने फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर्स यहां बैठे हैं, हमारा ही कंसर्न नहीं है। अगर ये व्यवस्था लागू होती है तो इसका नुकसान सारे राज्यों को होगा। फाइनेंस कहीं कोई राज्य ये सोचे कि हमारी पार्टी की तो सेंट्रल में गवर्नमेंट है, मैं उनको भी कहना चाहता हूं ये इस बुलावे में मत रहना, क्योंकि अगर ये फाइनेंस कमीशन इस तरह के पैरामीटर्स बना के अपनी रिपोर्ट देगा तो सारे राज्यों को नुकसान होने वाला है।
In 1971, the southern states had more than 24% of the country's population. The 2011 census shows their population was reduced to 20%. Between 2001 and 2011, Andhra Pradesh's population growth was 11.1%. Telangana's population growth was 17.87%, while Tamil Nadu's population growth was 15.6%. Karnataka saw a 15.7% rise in population between 2001 and 2011, while Kerala's population grew by a mere 4.9%. Maharashtra recorded a population growth of 16%. Meanwhile, the population in Uttar Pradesh grew by 20.1%, Bihar's by 25.1%, Madhya Pradesh by 20.3%, Rajasthan saw a growth of 21.4%, while Gujarat recorded a 19.2% rise in its population during this period. The protesting states argue that under the terms of reference of the 15th Finance Commission, the states that recorded a major rise in population will benefit. This despite the Prime Minister advocating giving priority to states that have successfully controlled their population. Consequently, all the states that were able to control their population growth are now demanding a bigger share of the revenue. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV. The Finance Commission defines the financial relations between the centre and the state. Its purpose is to divide the proceeds of divisible taxes between the states and the central government. Let's understand in detail what its functions are.
Post-independence, India suffered from both vertical and horizontal fiscal imbalances. Vertical imbalances between the centre and the state governments and horizontal imbalances among the state governments. Then question before the constitution makers was how to share resources among the states. The Finance Commission was constituted to address this need. It was established under Article 280 of the Constitution, which states that the President will constitute a Finance Commission within 2 years from the commencement of the Constitution and thereafter at the end of every 5th year or earlier as deemed necessary. The Commission shall include a chairman and 4 other members.
Finance commissions are formed every 5 years. They take into account the various financial resources of the government, central government, and looks into how that can be devolved to the state governments through a formula. And this is included by the centre in its financial transfers to the states in every budget.
As per the provisions contained in Finance Commission Act 1951, the chairman is selected from persons who had experience in public affairs and 4 other members are selected from among persons who are qualified to be appointed as judges of a high court or have special knowledge of finance and accounts of the government, or have had experience in financial matters and in administration, or have special knowledge of economics.
अधिकतर लोग सरकार से जुड़े हुए और सरकार से ऐसे लोग जो सरकार की नीतियों को सपोर्ट करते हों और उसके अलावा जो केंद्र और राज्यों के बीच में जो रिश्ते हैं, वित्तीय रिश्ते, उनको लेकर जो एक्सपर्ट होते हैं उन्हीं की नियुक्ति होती है, तो उसी के आधार पे इसमें इसका भी गठन किया गया है.
The main functions of the Finance Commission is to decide the financial relations between the state and the central governments. The Finance Commission further advises the President on several matters, including the distribution between the Union and the states of the net proceeds of taxes, which are to be or may be divided between them, and the allocation among the states of respective shares of such proceeds. To determine the quantum of grants and aid to be given by the centre to states and to evolve the principle to govern the eligibility of the state for such grant and aid. Any other matter referred to the Commission by the President in the interest of sound finance. Several issues like debt relief, financing of calamity relief of states, additional excise duties, etc. have been referred to the Commission, invoking this clause.
As I mentioned, Article 280 of the Constitution provides for setting up of a Finance Commission every 5 years. So the Finance Commission gets its powers from this article, and the Finance Commission gives an award. It takes roughly about 2 years for its deliberations. It meets with various state governments, it meets with a lot of stakeholders, it meets with the central ministries also, and understands the requirements of funds of various arms of the government, including central, state, panchayats and municipalities, and then says that this is the kind of resources that will be required.
In 1993, state finance commissions were established on the lines of Finance Commission across India. These commissions are constituted under Article 243I and 243Y of the Constitution. The state finance commissions are also formed every 5 years. The aim is to review the financial conditions of panchayat, decides grant and aid to panchayats, look at taxes, duties, tolls and fees that may be assigned to panchayats. The reports of the Commission, together with memorandum of action taken on it, is laid before the state legislature. These provisions are modelled on Article 280 that contains provisions regarding appointment of a Finance Commission for distribution of finances between Union and the states. With inputs from Leena Sharma, Bureau Report for Rajya Sabha TV.
We'll take a short break on the program. Don't go anywhere.
Watch The Big Picture with me, Frank Rausen Pereira, at 6:30 p.m.
चार साल मोदी सरकार आज मिलिए केंद्रीय मंत्री नितिन गडकरी से।
2 किलोमीटर पर डे तक रोड कंस्ट्रक्शन आया था, तो 2 किलोमीटर से बदलकर 14 गुना वृद्धि हुई, 28 किलोमीटर हुई। अभी दिल्ली का दिल्ली मेरठ एक्सप्रेस हाईवे में से पहला पार्ट 14 लेन का रोड है। मैं कश्मीर में ही केवल 60,000 करोड़ के काम, नॉर्थ ईस्ट में 1.5 लाख करोड़ के काम, बॉर्डर एरिया में करीब 50,000 करोड़ के काम कर रहा हूँ। मैं 6 नए पोर्ट बनाने की बात कर रहा हूँ। मैं अंडमान निकोबार से लेकर मुंबई तक के क्रूज चलाना चाहता हूँ। हमारे देश का किसान देश का फ्यूल तैयार करेगा। सभी बातें अच्छी होगी ऐसा नहीं, आधी बात कमी भी हो सकती है और उसको स्वीकारने में मैं डरता भी नहीं।
4 साल मोदी सरकार सिर्फ राज्यसभा टीवी पर।
Tales that inspire. Stories of social change. A salute to diversity. Promoting public discourse. Events that motivate. Inspiring the innovative spirit. Watch Rajya Sabha television documentaries.
Welcome back. You're watching In Depth on the Finance Commissions of India. Apart from the Finance Commission, there are many other constitutional ways to help the states financially. The founders of our Constitution made several provisions in the Constitution for this. Let's find out what they are.
Our Constitution makers conceived a country where everyone has equal rights on all the resources, be they natural or material resources. Emphasis is on the equal distribution of financial resources between the states and the centre. The Finance Commission plays a very important role in ensuring this. Constitution makers were clear that never will the centre think that any state is at its mercy, while at the same time, states will never feel the centre is exploiting them. There is also no separate constitutional provision that lays down the state's liability for revenue contribution to the centre. That task of distribution was left to the Finance Commission, but the law related to taxes was clearly mentioned in the Constitution. Article 268 to 281 clearly mentions the division of revenues between the centre and states. Apart from this, the 7th schedule also discusses tax sources for the centre and the states.
It is true that we needed a certain degree of fiscal centralization in the early decades after independence because we inherited 550 principalities of Rajas and Maharajas in 1947 from the British, and we needed to create a modern nation state. Therefore, there was a need for a strong central government, and therefore it was necessary to have a certain degree of fiscal centralization as well. However, over time, obviously, our modern nation state has evolved, and states need more space, and therefore, fiscal decentralization must happen.
The founding fathers of our Constitution were aware that even after the revenue distribution, the centre will have miscellaneous sources of money, while states will have less money. According to Article 275(1) of the Constitution, Parliament, through a law, can give grants to the states when required. How much will be decided by the Finance Commission, Apart from this, under Article 282, both the centre and the state can give grants for any public purpose. But it has been excluded from the Finance Commission's decision making.
There should be some objectivity in transfer of resources to the states. It should not be at the whims and fancies of the government that is in power on the particular day. So, and also it also ensures that the states will be in a position to know what is the quantum and the likely resources they would receive every year. So that will be useful for them in their budgetary preparations as well as for framing various schemes of expenditure for the states. So in a sense, it provides certain amount of certainty to the resources that the states would get from the centre. So that's a major purpose of the Finance Commission.
Apart from the grants, centre and the state can take loans from the Consolidated Fund of India. Under Article 292 of the Constitution, the centre can take loans from both internal and external sources. Under Article 293, states also have the right to take loan, but not from external sources. Apart from this, the Constitution also has a provision for financial review for local administrations. Information about the functioning of the state-level commissions has been given in Article 243I and Y of the Constitution. The State-Level Finance Commission has been given powers to review the financial status of the local administrations. With the 73rd and 74th articles of the Constitution, it becomes more important. In this way, important provisions have been made in the Constitution for the revenue system from centre to village panchayats.
So the most decentralized governments, most fiscally decentralized governments are the rich country governments. And we need to move in that direction. हमें भी उस ओर अग्रसर होना आवश्यक है. तो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में जो बातें लिखी हैं, जरूरी है ये है कि उनको इस ऐतिहासिक परिवेश में देखते हुए हमें आगे बढ़ना चाहिए और वित्त आयोगों को भी अपना काम करना चाहिए.
For the division of taxes between the centre and states, from time to time, important changes have been made in many articles by amending the Constitution. The Constitution 80th Amendment Act 2000, based on the recommendations of the 10th Finance Commission through a Constitution amendment, deals with an alternative scheme for sharing taxes between the Union and the states. Apart from this, the 101st Constitution Amendment Bill has changed the system of indirect taxes for goods and services tax. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Ever since the first Finance Commission was set up, the nature of India's economy as well as macroeconomic policy has changed dramatically. In this report, let's take a look at the structure of the previous commissions as well as their recommendations that they have made in several years. We'll tell you that the first commission was set up in 1951 by the then President. Under Article 280 of the Constitution, the President is entitled to appoint this commission. Take a look at this report. The Finance Commission is a statutory, independent, non-political body. There have been 15 Finance Commissions till date. The most recent was constituted in 2017 and is chaired by N.K. Singh, a former member of the Planning Commission.
If all the revenues are collected by the centre and the expenditure is undertaken by the state, then how is the state going to actually spend anything if it doesn't collect much taxes itself? Not that it doesn't collect taxes. Of course it collects taxes. That's the own tax revenue. And every state must collect more and more own tax revenue and be more self-reliant rather than be simply dependent upon the devolution of taxes which are collected by the centre. But clearly, given the imbalance in our federal structure of who spends and who collects, the Finance Commission's role is absolutely central.
The Finance Commission of India came into existence on the 22nd of November 1951. K.C. Neogi was the chairman of the commission that remained operational from 1952 to 1957. The second Finance Commission was constituted by President Rajendra Prasad on the 1st of June 1956 for the period 1957 to 1962. It recommended that the share of the states in the net proceeds of income tax should be increased to 60%. It also said that the actual distribution of share assigned to the states should be on the basis of population. The third Finance Commission was set up in December 1960 for 1960 to 1964. A.K. Chanda was its chairman. One of its main recommendations was to formulate an independent commission to assess the tax potential of each state, to review its tax structure, and also recommend rates under different heads of levies of the state list. The fourth Finance Commission was constituted by the President in 1964 for the period 1966 to 1969. P.V. Rajamannar was its chairman. It recommended tax sharing and allocation of income tax and union excise duties, as well as grants and aid to states in need of assistance. The fifth Finance Commission was appointed in February 1968 for the period 1969 to 1974. Mahavir Tyagi was its chairman. On the 28th of June 1972, the sixth Finance Commission was appointed under the chairmanship of Brahmanand Reddy. It remained operational from 1974 to 1979. The seventh Finance Commission was appointed in 1977 under the chairmanship of J.M. Shelar. It recommended that the share of states in the net proceeds be raised to 85%, except the share of the union territories, that would be 2.19% of net proceeds. The eighth Finance Commission came into being in 1982 under the chairmanship of Y.V. Chavan. Operational from 1984 to 1989, the Commission made recommendations relating to sharing of income tax, union excise duties and grants in aid. It suggested retention of the share of the states in the proceeds of the income tax at 85% level. The ninth Finance Commission was constituted in June 1987. It was chaired by N.K.P. Salve from 1989 to 1995. This commission also made recommendations on income tax, relief funds as well as debt relief. The 10th Finance Commission was incorporated in 1995. K.C. Pant was appointed as its chairman. The commission took note of the growing revenue expenditure and deficit on revenue account, as well as growing inter-regional disparities in the country's finance both at centre and state levels. The 11th Finance Commission was appointed on the 3rd of July 1998 for the period 2000 to 2005. A.M. Khusro was the chairman of the commission that recommended the share of states in the net proceeds of all central taxes and duties be fixed at 28%. It also said 1.5% of all tax revenue should be allocated to the states separately. The 12th Finance Commission of India was appointed on the 1st of November 2002. Veteran economist C. Rangarajan was the chairman of this commission that was operational from 2005 to 2010. Major recommendations were to bring about macroeconomic stability. It also suggested that the total fiscal deficit for centre and states be reduced to 3% of the GDP, and the total tax GDP ratio of both centre and states be increased to 17.6% of GDP in 2009 and 10. It also made recommendations on distribution of union tax, grants to local bodies, grants and aid to states, and calamity relief fund. The 13th Finance Commission was constituted under the chairmanship of Vijay Kelkar on the 13th of November 2007. The duration of this commission was from 2010 to 2015. The 14th Finance Commission was set up on 2nd January 2013. Former RBI Governor Y.B. Reddy was appointed its chairman. Its operational duration is from 2015 to 2020. Its major recommendations are that the share of states in net proceeds of the shareable central taxes should be 42%. Besides, it also suggests reduction and elimination of revenue deficit. The 15th Finance Commission was set up in November 2017 for the period 2020 to 2025. Former Rajya Sabha MP N.K. Singh is its chairman.
There is a feeling in some parts of the stakeholders that the Finance Commission gives an award and after which it winds up. Now there are the terms of references which are coming up now get into more intricate philosophical attitudes. Like for instance, how should the states be compensated for various measures which they take, which are not really efficient, okay, populist in nature. Should the government of India's resources, when they collect, should it be devolved to fund those kind of schemes which are going to be wasteful as far as the country is concerned?
Experts say the task of the 15th Finance Commission has been made tougher after the rollout of the goods and service tax regime. After the GST rollout, certain taxation powers have been taken away from the Union and the states and given to the newly formed GST Council. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV. And that's all we have for you in this edition of In Depth. Thanks for your time.